Fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words,
in the past 50 years, our world has been constantly changing. We have new technology, new fashion, and have much more knowledge about the world we're living in. As science progresses further, we forget that at one time, everything was still a mystery. Imagine that you grew up in the 1960s. There are no cell phones, no laptops, or even DVD players. If you were a child in the 60s, you probably listened to the Beatles or the Beach Boys on a record player, instead of One Direction and Justin Bieber on your iPod. TVs were a brand new phenomenon, and you might go home after school to watch a black and white television instead of playing video games. As the technology advanced in the 1960s, we started wondering more about the world around us. But even more, we wanted to know what was going on beyond our world. For thousands of years, people had wondered about the moon. How far away was it? What was it made of? And will we ever get there? Telescopes showed us pictures of the moon's surface. Scientists saw large, dark patches surrounded by raised, rocky areas. They thought that the moon was covered in large bodies of water, just like Earth. But still, we wanted to get closer. In 1959, the Soviet Union, the country that we call Russia today, sent unmanned spacecrafts to the moon. The Luna 2 crashed into the moon near a large crater. The Luna 3 went to the far side of the moon and took the very first close-up pictures. These were the first spacecrafts to reach another world. America wanted to go to the moon too. In 1963, President Kennedy made a speech saying that America's goal should be to send a man to the moon and return him safely to Earth. After years of preparation and training, NASA was ready to reach that goal. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins were chosen to be aboard the spacecraft Apollo 11 when it was sent to the moon. All three astronauts knew that their mission was going to be dangerous. No one even knew if they were going to be successful. On July 16, 1969, Apollo 11 launched into space. It took the crew 3 days to travel 238,900 miles and to enter the moon's orbit. They orbited the moon 30 times and then located their landing spot. On July 20th, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin entered the lunar module, which would separate from the spacecraft and be piloted down to the moon's surface. Michael Collins stayed aboard Apollo 11. At 2:39 on the morning of July 21st, Neil Armstrong opened the door of the lunar module, stepped out onto the moon's surface, and made history.
I'm going to step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
fly me to the moon, let me play among the stars.
Aldrin and Armstrong spent 2.5 hours on the moon's surface, collecting samples and bringing back information. We learned that the moon is completely dry, and the large patches they saw are actually huge craters. There is a thick layer of dust on the surface of the moon, but there is no atmosphere and no wind. The footprints that the astronauts left on the moon are still there. In fact, scientists can learn about what happened to the moon thousands of years ago just by looking at it today. The moon is frozen in time. After Apollo 11, many more astronauts went to visit the moon. There are also satellites in space gathering information about Earth's atmosphere and weather. We are even sending spacecrafts to other planets. In 1976, space probes successfully landed on Mars and sent back pictures of the planet. Recently, space probes sent back information that showed that there used to be water on Mars. But our discoveries are far from over. Is there life on other planets? How far through the Milky Way can we travel? What can you do to help explore our universe?